Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, Series 2000. This week, I'm excited to visit Invasion of the Body Squeezers Parts 1 and 2. I was happy to check these two books out because I was ready to see Stein give us a proper alien invasion story, and given that the title's an obvious play on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I was interested to see his take on it. I was also curious to see how Stein handled his first two-part book. I found both books largely enjoyable, although I'm not convinced this really needed to be split into two. Removing an entire storyline that ultimately goes nowhere in the first book would have made it a better story overall in my opinion. I liked the aliens themselves and the various possessed adults our protagonist is forced to encounter. I think this one is worth checking out if you haven't yet. These two 1998 covers both enhance the stories themselves. It's fun we get a detailed look at the starring aliens, and I think they're decently creepy as far as Goosebumps monsters go. I especially like the little dog tearing into the alien's leg on part 1, and how on part 2 you can see the kid on the bottom right corner becoming possessed by the alien claws. I didn't find any merchandise this week, but what I did find interesting is that the cover for both books is actually cropped from one image. I guess it was originally intended to wrap around the whole book versus being split into two. Our front tag for part 1 says, "Talk about a tight squeeze," because these aliens like to give bear hugs. Our front tag for part 2 says, "Please don't squeeze the human." Apparently this is from an old toilet paper slogan that said, "Please don't squeeze the Charmin." This was before my time, so we're just gonna have to trust the wiki on that one.
You've been giving the missus a tough time for squeezing Charmin bathroom tissue.
But we don't squeeze new Charmin in the store.
Yeah.
See, there's a sign. Oh, Whipple.
Please don't squeeze the Charmin.
I am ready, I repeated, speaking from my robot-like trance. They are coming. Stop that, Jack, Miss Hanson scolded. You're scaring everyone. Why did you throw that clay? Huh? Voices buzzed in my ear. I could barely hear my own voice. The others are coming. From their planet, I announced. They are coming very soon. Then, on the back of part 2 we have, the alien opened its mouth, revealing 4 tusks and rows of pointed teeth. A cap of green skin formed over its forehead, curved and hard like a turtle shell. It spread its arms, raised them out at its sides, and took a heavy, wet step towards me. I finally forced my trembling legs to move. I stumbled back. Are you friendly? I choked out in a tiny voice. Okay, now let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Jack and his younger sister Billy, whose annoying younger sibling character trait for this book is that she's hyper-competitive with Jack. They're currently sitting around eating snacks and watching a lovely TV show called Fangs, which focuses on animals eating other animals. Jack and Billy are both all about this, but I think that sounds depressing. I hate when shows like Planet Earth suck me in with how awesome or adorable nature is, only to remind me of reality at some point. Jack briefly lets the reader know his true passion is space and the unknown, which is convenient because one paragraph later, their little animal murder show is interrupted by a special news bulletin that an unidentified object has entered Earth's atmosphere. The scientists say it could be a comet or a meteor, but are surprised it didn't burn up given its size. Then we're right back to mountain lions eating things on TV. Jack decides he's had enough TV and is off to spy on their new neighbor, Mr. Fleshman, which is quite the name. Mr. Fleshman is described as being tall and lanky with a dark tan and silver hair and eyes, which are so bright you can barely see the pupils. He also has a tendency to wear all black, rendering him even more suspicious to Jack. We also learn that Jack is a bit of a peeping Tom. A couple weeks back he was watching the night sky with binoculars when he just so happened to look into Mr. Fleshman's windows, where he spotted some sort of mysterious gray monster with a smashed up face and a dangling eye roaming around the house. Jack only saw it for a couple seconds before it moved out of view, but he's been obsessed with spotting it ever since, so he heads off to the backyard to literally stick his head between 2 fence pickets to watch Mr. Fleshman's house. While staring at the house, he's suddenly attacked by a mysterious glowing ball straight to the face. He immediately thinks it's the comet from the TV announcement, but it's just a regular rubber ball that's been chucked at him by a group of kids from school. These kids are Maddie, Marcia, Derek, and Henry, and hopefully we don't have the makings of the dreaded Goosebumps friend group, because I don't think I can handle that for 2 books in one sitting. He tries to explain the mystery creature situation to these kids, but they just mock him and remind him of all the other crazy things he's supposedly seen, including the time he thought their science teacher was a werewolf because the man was growing a beard. Mr. Fleshman suddenly appears on the back porch, causing all the kids to scatter, except Jack, who gets locked into a stare down with this man. It then quickly jumps to dinner, where Jack is trying to explain to his parents his monster theories on Mr. Fleshman, but these are easily dismissed and he's told to stop being such a nosy little creep. After dinner, his parents leave for the movies and Billy heads over to her friend's house, leaving Jack all alone to cause trouble. He wants to get a look inside Mr. Fleshman's house, and decides the best way to do this is to go over and ask for the golden ball that landed in his backyard earlier. Jack goes about this in a very odd manner though. Instead of going to the front door like a normal person, he decides to squeeze through the fence and knock on the back door. If someone knocked on the back door of my fenced off yard in the middle of the night, I'd immediately think they were villains of some nature. Jack gets no response, but hears a bunch of thrashing around happen inside the house, so he peeks in the window to see what's going on in there. He is then shocked when he spots the creature throwing Mr. Fleshman around the house. The creature is large, gray, with a crushed-in head and dangling eye. It also has an ugly hair-covered snout and rows of jagged, broken teeth. Jack is horrified as the monster tosses Mr. Fleshman out of sight, so Jack races home to call the police. Before he can dial out, though, the phone rings and he's met with, "Jack, I'm a monster. I know you saw me. Now I have no choice. I have to come over there and kill you." This just ends up being incredible timing by the aforementioned friend group, who just so happen to be doing some prank calling. He begs them to come over because he's scared, but they just laugh at him, so he hangs up the phone to dial the police. The phone rings twice when he's startled by a knock at the door. For some reason, he thinks it's his friends. I don't know why, unless they can teleport or something, because he was just on the phone with them 5 seconds ago. He hangs up the phone and then stupidly wanders over to the door, where he is astonished to spot Mr. Fleshman. Mr. Fleshman says he brought Jack his golden ball back, so Jack feels obligated to open the door. I would not feel this way and would keep that door shut. Mr. Fleshman confronts Jack and says he knows that he's been spying on him and that he needs to stop. He goes on to say that his work is top secret and he doesn't want to take this any further. It occurs to Jack that he's being threatened and he promises to leave Mr. Fleshman alone, but the moment this man walks away, Jack tells himself he's just gonna have to spy even harder. We jump to the next day and Jack's in the backyard again with binoculars. He's not very subtle with his spying because he's literally just standing in the backyard facing this man's house. Jack alternates between watching Mr. Fleshman's house and looking for the mystery object in the sky. The object is apparently large enough and bright enough that it can be seen in daylight, but he hasn't seen it yet. The news keeps referring to it as a comet, but people are starting to have their suspicions around what this mystery object really is. Jack's latest plan is to wait until Mr. Fleshman leaves the house so he can break in and see the creature for himself. He makes no mention of a camera or anything, so I guess he's just hoping his parents will believe him. I'm kind of failing to see the logic with this because he's already seen the creature twice without breaking and entering, and they didn't believe him then, so... We waste quite a bit of time in this backyard, with Jack first getting interrupted by Billy, and then interrupted again by Henry and Derek. None of this goes anywhere though, and reads as filler. Jack's mom appears, and is in the process of hauling Jack off to visit some elderly relatives, when she spots Mr. Fleshman and wants to say hi. His mom then behaves in typical mom fashion, and completely spills Jack's secrets. She jokingly asks Mr. Fleshman about the science experiments in his house and the strange creatures. He laughs and responds that he's keeping his alien friends in the house while they make their plans to take over Earth. His mom laughs, but Jack knows Mr. Fleshman was probably telling a version of the truth. We jump to that night, and the entire family is again watching their favorite Animals Eating Animals show, when the news interrupts to give an update on the mystery object in the sky. The large object seems to be breaking up and shooting off in several directions. They are still claiming it's a meteor breaking apart, but Jack knows it's aliens. He heads outside with his trusty binoculars to see if he can spot any of these fragments, when he notices Mr. Fleshman is also staring up at the night sky. Mr. Fleshman declares unprompted that he's just waiting for his friends, and then scares Jack with some prank eyeballs on springs glasses, like these. I want to know how long this man stood outside in these glasses waiting for Jack, so he could pull off this joke. At first, Jack thinks maybe Mr. Fleshman is trying to be friendly, but Mr. Fleshman quickly reverts to being threatening as he warns Jack to stop telling his mother stories about him, causing Jack to run back inside with fright. We hop to the next morning, and Jack is having himself a bowl of frosted flakes, letting us know that Stein must have written this one himself. Jack heads into the backyard for some more spying, where he is briefly distracted by his hunt for the object in the sky. He suddenly then spots the creature in Mr. Fleshman's kitchen window, probably finishing up his own bowl of frosted flakes. The creature vanishes from view, and Jack notices Mr. Fleshman's car isn't in the garage, so he must be out and about. He decides this is the perfect opportunity to investigate Mr. Fleshman's house, and proceeds to crawl through the kitchen window. Throughout all of this, Jack is very concerned about running into Mr. Fleshman, but makes no mention of being worried about running into, a goddamn monster. He also has no camera, so I still don't know what kind of proof this boy is hoping to obtain. Jack then wanders around the house hollering, "Is anyone home?" like he wants to get eaten. He admires Mr. Fleshman's extensive horror movie poster collection, and stumbles across a photo album full of alien pictures. He decides this photo album is the perfect piece of evidence and snatches it up. He then comes across a room with a black coffin in it, and as he approaches, the lid starts to move. This causes Jack to panic, and he races out of the room for the kitchen, but gets lost and ends up in some sort of laboratory. There's all sorts of mad scientist lab equipment in this room, and suddenly a white cloud of mist rises up, and Jack immediately thinks it's a ghost of some sort, versus just fumes off of all these chemicals. He races out into the hall, where he spots the mystery creature lumbering towards him. He backs into the laboratory, while trying to think of an escape plan, and grabs a small black object as a weapon. Then, Mr. Fleshman grabs him by the shoulder for a classic shoulder scare. The story then loses some momentum as we learn that Mr. Fleshman isn't harboring aliens. He's just a special effects artist and the creature is his latest mechanical project. He decided to scare Jack for being a little peeping Tom after he told the boy to leave him alone. Mr. Fleshman also lets us know that he named the creature Cutie because he thinks it's so cute. Jack leaves the house in a great mood, but we have like 60 pages and a whole nother book to go, so this good mood probably won't last for long. The story then jumps to a week later, and it's the Sunday night before the first day of school. Jack is digging through his clothes when he comes across the small black object he grabbed from Mr. Fleshman's house. He had forgotten all about it and stuffed it in his pocket in confusion. He studies the object, which is a small black cube with tiny holes in the top and a button on the side. He presses the button and nothing happens, and he tells himself he'll just give it back in the morning. However, that night, Jack has weird dreams where he can hear tiny robotic high-pitched voices talking all around him, while it also sounds like he's drowning in static. His mom wakes him up and says, "It's time to get ready for school," to which Jack responds, "I will obey." He's startled by his own response and has no idea why he answered it like some sort of robot. He gets dressed, but feels strange the whole time and has an odd buzzing sound in his ears. He finds himself talking to the little cube and asking it things like, "When are you coming?" and "Can you tell me what day?" and then salutes the box. He kind of snaps too and is freaked out. He has no idea who he's talking to or why, and decides he needs to get this little cube back to Mr. Fleshman ASAP. He's forced to have breakfast with his family, but has moments where all he can hear is buzzing and chirping sounds, causing him to have another freak out. After breakfast, he walks up Mr. Fleshman's driveway, but suddenly the voices in his head get so intense, a flash of white pain orders him to turn back and keep the cube, so he heads off to school with it. It's kind of fun getting to read from Jack's point of view as he's under the control of this mystery cube. In art class, they're supposed to be making a clay sculpture of his friend Maddie, but Jack gets lost in all the buzzing and clicking voices in his head, and when he opens his eyes, he's made a perfectly round sphere of clay. He then hops up and chucks the clay sphere at the window while shouting in a robot voice things like, "I will obey," "I am ready," "They are coming," "The others are coming from their planet." This freaks the class out, and his art teacher takes him to the nurse's office where she makes him take a nap. At dinner that night, Jack continues to lose it as his parents try to figure out what the fuck is wrong with their son. He shows them the cube, but they can't hear anything and think maybe all this meteor talk is starting to affect him. When they learn that he's stolen the cube from Mr. Fleshman, they order him to return it that night. While walking over, Jack is terrified of the neighbor's dog, specifically the tennis ball in its mouth, and he has no idea why. When he reaches Mr. Fleshman's door, he's already there and greets Jack with a classic, "I've been expecting you." This is a fake out though. Mr. Fleshman was just expecting Jack would want to see more movie magic tricks. Jack hands over the little cube, and Mr. Fleshman informs him that it's his beeper. And if you're too young to know, it just beeps to let him know he has a phone message. Mr. Fleshman offers to show Jack a two-headed shark robot he's working on, but Jack declines and starts walking home. On the way, he's suddenly nearly struck by a fireball from the sky. He approaches the crash site cautiously and finds an orange glowing meteor. He pokes it with a stick for a bit before deciding it's safe to pick up with his hands. He is then startled by Billy, who thinks he found a regular old rock and is crazy. He goes to show his parents his meteor, and they also think he's crazy, so he retreats to his room to get ready for bed. Once in his room though, he starts hearing voices again, which concerns him because he no longer has the beeper cube, meaning the voices have been in his head this whole time. The voices then begin saying things like, "You will help us, you will be ready, you will follow the plan, you will help us take root, and you will help us spread our roots." Jack says, "I will obey," to these orders, and then shouts no he won't, so this poor boy is struggling to fight the voices in his head. He suddenly decides to call in on a radio program that likes talking about space and pop culture, but this just results in the producer hanging up on him when she finds out he's 12 years old. It's an odd little detour from the story. The next day, he decides to bring the meteorite to Mr. Liss, the school science teacher. This all gets derailed though, because once in the science class, we have 3 solid pages of kids stealing Jack's meteorite and tossing it around the room in a game of keep away. It goes on for a very long time, and it results in the meteorite getting tossed out the window. The school also happens to be enormous, and the science class is on the 4th floor, so when the meteorite goes out the window, the voices in Jack's head command him to jump after it, which he responds with, "I will obey." Just when the entire class thinks they're about to witness something awful, he stops himself from jumping and races out of the classroom and down the stairs. He finds the meteor in the grass and is relieved to see it isn't broken. I think Jack should stop and think about where this meteorite came from. Literal space. I don't think a 4-story fall into the grass is going to do much damage. Jack decides he can't go back to school with all these assholes and races home with his precious meteor. Back at home, he wallows in his room for a bit before the voices in his head tell him the aliens will be arriving any minute. He snaps back to reality and decides to go ask Mr. Fleshman for help out of desperation. Before knocking on the back door, he spots Mr. Fleshman on the phone talking to somebody frantically. Jack overhears that the beeper was in fact not a beeper, but some sort of communication device, and that the invasion is underway. He then promises to a general of some nature that he will destroy them all. Whether he's referring to destroying all humans or destroying all the aliens is left ambiguous. Jack decides it must mean destroying all the aliens, and that Mr. Fleshman works for the government in some capacity. He then runs back to his room where he comes across his meteor mid-hatching. It's glowing a green light so bright that it fills the entire room, and he notices 2 little arms crawling out of the cracked meteor. He gets close and sees, squinting into the pulsing green light, I watched a slender head pop out in the square opening, narrow and green and shiny wet, like a lizard's head. The 2 front legs poked out further. The head tilted back and sniffed, breathing the air for the first time. A narrow green body lifted itself from the opening, an insect body, almost like a stick figure. I stared frozen in place as the front legs lowered itself silently to the dressing table. The rest of the stick-like body slid out quickly. The back legs hit the table. Wet. Sparkling wet. The creature stood on all 4s, a little bigger than a grasshopper. It tilted its head up. 2 oval, shiny black eyes gazed up to the ceiling. 4 feet made wet, sucking sounds as they took their first steps towards the edge of the dresser. As I stared in amazement, the feet appeared to grow, to stretch. The creature took another step. The feet made wet, plopping sounds with each step. The slender body thickened. The head appeared to inflate. The creature was big as a lizard now. Growing, growing, growing as it climbed down. I saw a thick trail of milky slime on top of my dressing table. Then I heard the voices again, chirping excitedly. Louder now, much louder. And then I realized the voices came from inside the meteorite. They weren't inside my head. I wasn't crazy after all. The voices were real. The creature landed on the floor on its back feet. The wet feet made a soft squish and spread out over the floor. The creature stood on its hind legs now, stretching, growing. Shiny, slender arms poked out from the broadening shoulders. The insect head shifted and changed. A square forehead jutted out. The insect snout pulled back. Now I saw 2 deep nostrils and a small, lipless mouth. Squish, squish. The creature took 2 steps away from the dressing table. It grew taller and broader. It raised its shiny eyes until I saw my reflection in its eyes. It can see me, I realized. A real-life space alien, and it can see me. And as I stared frozen in shock and horror, it pushed out its long arms, still growing and stretching, taller than me now. Squish, squish. It stuck out its arms and came for me. And that's it for part 1. It really could have been reduced by like 70 pages if Stein just cut out the Mr. Fleshman fake-out, but we'll see how good part 2 is before I judge how much of this book was filler. Part 2 opens with a 4-page recap of the previous book, and Jack is right back to being face-to-face with this human-sized alien. His first line of defense is just to start blabbing at it. He introduces himself and begins asking if the alien is friendly or not. The alien just clicks his teeth and moves closer, causing Jack to race out of his bedroom full speed and dive down the stairs. The alien saunters after him, and Jack ends up crashing into another alien right outside his door. Except not really. It's Mr. Liss, the science teacher from earlier. He was so worried about Jack, he decided to see if he was okay. Because I'm sure that this teacher is just able to leave campus midday to go check on a student. Jack tells Mr. Liss that a space creature is in the house, and Mr. Liss just thinks this child has lost his mind. He eventually decides to go inside to calm Jack down, but Jack realizes this may be a bad idea and doesn't want his teacher getting eaten. They spend the next chapter tensely searching each room as Mr. Liss becomes progressively more concerned about Jack's mental health. Just as they're giving up and leaving the house, Jack comes face to face with the alien blocking the front door. Mr. Liss then takes the cake for one of the Goosebumps' stupidest characters. You'll be wondering why this man has ever been allowed to educate children. Mr. Liss spots the alien and excitedly begins saying how they're going to be rich. He wants to find a camera and begins trying to communicate with the alien, who just stares at him coldly. The alien has its arms outstretched, and Mr. Liss thinks this means it wants a hug. So the man moves in for a big old bear hug. The alien wraps its arms around Mr. Liss, and it's like, aw, that's nice, until the alien starts squeezing harder and harder, hence the Body Squeezers title. Jack grabs a flower vase to throw at the alien, but it's too late. It suddenly grows long silver claws from its tube-like fingers and proceeds to stab them into Mr. Liss's back. Things then get weird as the creature somehow pulls itself into Mr. Liss's back and disappears. The entire time, Mr. Liss is screaming, but once the creature is inside of him, he stops, smooths out his shirt, and acts like nothing happened. Mr. Liss then begins smacking his lips and attempting to speak. Very slowly, one word at a time, he tries to tell Jack he's fine. Jack notices green blobs pulsating out of Mr. Liss's ears that keep disappearing back inside of them periodically. Mr. Liss says he feels great and offers Jack a hug because it wants to spread itself to you too. Then it will be inside of both of us. No thanks. Mr. Liss continues to move in for a hug until Jack races towards the back door and crashes into his mom and sister, who both want to know why he's home so early. He tries to explain how an alien crawled into Mr. Liss, but naturally that doesn't go over too well. Mr. Liss explains that Jack was teased at school and he was just checking in on him to make sure he was okay. The entire time Mr. Liss is talking, he keeps interjecting sounds into his sentences and scratching his neck and shoulders. Mr. Liss goes to shake Jack's mom's hand, but Jack swats it away and warns her not to touch him. Jack's mom sends him to his room, but Jack hangs around to make sure Mr. Liss doesn't pass the alien into her. Once Mr. Liss leaves, Jack spots him hugging the mailman at the end of the driveway, and when the mailman pulls away, he has green goo moving in and out of his ears too. It then occurs to Jack that these aliens are going to go around hugging everyone they see until they take over all of Los Angeles, and then the world. Jack then remembers his plan to see Mr. Fleshman and sneaks out to find him. The man doesn't answer the door, so Jack just lets himself in like usual at this point. He looks at the photo album of alien costumes, but now knows these are actual alien photos. He finds Mr. Fleshman in his laboratory and tells him he knows everything. He knows that the aliens have landed, that he's a secret agent, and that the aliens are spreading to the people. Mr. Fleshman confirms he's part of the Alien Detection Agency and tells Jack to keep a list of everyone he sees getting a hug so the agency can deal with it, but to otherwise stay inside and hide. Jack agrees to this and leaves Mr. Fleshman's house reassured, even though Mr. Fleshman is obviously no good. At the end of the driveway, he runs into his friend group who inform him that they just ran into Mr. Liss. Jack immediately wants to know if he gave them a hug, which causes the group of kids to quickly surround Jack in a group hug. However, it should be obvious by now, these kids are just joking because they've pretended to be or do whatever Jack is freaking out about in the moment this entire book. Henry and Derek end up visiting Jack for a bit, where he proceeds to recap the entire story so far, in case the first 4 pages of this book weren't enough of a recap, I guess, only to have them laugh and call Jack Saucer Man. It then jumps to school the next day, and Jack is worried about running into Mr. Liss, but runs into him almost immediately. He turns and runs away screaming all the way to the principal's office, where he again states the plot of this book so far. We did not need another 3 pages of detailed plot summary after literally just summarizing the plot 2 pages ago. This book is losing some steam for me. After Jack retells all of this book in excessive detail, the principal goes to comfort him when he notices green substance wiggling around in her ears. She chases him around her office for a bit before he's finally able to escape, but again he crashes into Mr. Liss. Doorways are incredibly dangerous things for Jack. Every other chapter in these 2 books has ended with him running into somebody in a doorway. Mr. Liss grabs him by the waist, but Jack is able to break free. He races down the hall and hides in the school auditorium, conveniently just in time for an assembly hosted by the LA Police Department. He hides into a group of kids and waits for the perfect moment to talk to the police. However, he decides the best time is once the assembly has already started, and he races to the stage screaming, "Stop! The school's been invaded by aliens!" The 2 cops on stage just stare at Jack in confusion, before the school principal scoops him up and hauls him backstage, declaring everything is okay, he's just a troubled student. Once out of sight, she pulls Jack in for a hug, and he can feel her nails growing into his back. Jack pretends to faint and collapses to the floor, which briefly seems to fluster the principal, giving him enough time to hop up and escape. He ends up hiding inside a costume chest, and we spend a lot of time complaining about how nasty these costumes smell, to the point Jack nearly throws up from it. He decides to stay put until after the assembly so he can talk to the cops, but he watches in horror as the principal gives both cops a thank you hug and transfers the alien into them too. He eventually crawls out of the trunk and tries to sneak out of the school, but is intercepted by Henry and Derek, who drag him over to the swim coach because throughout this entire book, they have been very insistent on getting Jack to join the swim team. They drag him to the pool where he gets changed and ready for a race. It's then notable that Henry and Derek refuse to get into the water, despite being in swim trunks, claiming they have some sort of ear infection. After Jack has made the swim team, the 2 boys try to corner him in the locker room and give him a hug as green goo moves around their ears. Lucky for Jack, the swim coach appears, causing the boys to scatter, which gives him a chance to race home. Once he arrives, he's confused to find the house completely empty, and then is terrified when he finds puddles of green goo all over the kitchen floor. He's trying to figure out what on earth the aliens did to his mom and sister when he notices a note on the fridge that clarifies that his mom took Billy to the doctor because her tonsils were so swollen she couldn't even eat her favorite Jell-O. So what? She threw the Jell-O all over the kitchen as a result? This was a very ham-fisted scene, even for Goosebumps standards. Jack is contemplating locking the doors and hiding for the rest of the day when Maddie and Marcia suddenly start banging on the door, begging to be let in. Jack's unsure if he should let them in, considering Henry and Derek have already been possessed, but he does it anyways. The girls immediately tell Jack how weird everybody at school has been acting, but they get interrupted with thuds from the outside. At first, the kids all think it's Derek and Henry banging at the door, but Jack peeks out the window and sees dozens of meteor eggs landing across the neighborhood. They head outside to look at the fiery eggs. When he turns to Maddie to explain what they are, he's met with, "It's about time they got here." Jack is able to get inside and lock the door before Marcia and Maddie can grab him. The 2 girls then violently throw themselves at the door trying to bust it in. The phone rings and it's Jack's dad, letting him know that they're at the hospital with Billy because she has to get her tonsils removed, and they won't be back until later that night. Jack tries to explain the alien invasion, but his dad just says he's ashamed of him, to stop making up stories and to grow up. If they think their kid is truly this unstable, they probably shouldn't leave him unsupervised at the house. After his father rudely hangs up on him, Jack goes back to the window just in time to see all of the eggs hatching into aliens and creatures spreading throughout the neighborhood looking for people to possess. At one point, he watches helplessly as his neighbors run screaming out of the house to a couple of nearby cops, only to have the cops pulled him in for a nice alien hug. He decides to go visit Mr. Fleshman because it still hasn't occurred to Jack that this guy might be trouble. He decides to run upstairs to see if the backyard is free of aliens before sneaking over, but spots Mr. Fleshman calmly watching TV in his living room, which does not fill Jack with much hope. He ends up staying home to wait out the night, trying his best to stay up until his parents return. He ends up falling asleep and sleeping until 10 a.m. the next morning, so he misses his parents. He finds a new note stating they'll be home later that day, so he thinks he'll just wait a little longer. While he's watching TV, he notices everyone has green goo in their ears, so the alien invasion has been very successful so far. Eventually his mom and Billy return, and Jack tries to explain the alien invasion for the 100th time in this story. As per usual, she doesn't believe him, but Billy insists she saw an alien at the hospital too, only her alien was blue, not green. Jack decides to pretend to go to school, but really he hops on the bus headed for downtown to visit his dad, who just so happens to work for the mayor. On the bus, Jack notices green goo in many people's ears, and at one bus stop witnesses an alien crawling into some guy's back. Once in the mayor's office, he bursts in on his dad and the mayor to warn him about the aliens, except it's too late. Both the mayor and his dad have become possessed too. His dad goes in for a hug, and Jack comes close to just giving in, until he accidentally knocks over a water bottle, causing the mayor and his dad to run away in fright. Jack uses this opportunity to escape back to the bus and heads home. Once back at his house, he tells his mom and sister to lock the bedroom door and to stay put. The house is then surrounded by fire trucks and police officers as his dad appears to be leading the charge. Jack is one of the last uninfected people, so they really put on a full-on manhunt for him. He remembers his super soaker in the basement and decides to go out guns blasting. He fills the squirt gun with water and opens the front door and starts spraying. Given the two other hints about water being scary, you'd think this was going somewhere, but nope. The aliens all laugh and say water doesn't bother them at all. Jack spots Mr. Fleshman and begins to beg for help, only for Mr. Fleshman to finally say why would he help? He's their leader. He then goes on to say all the aliens' energy comes from him, which is convenient because that means Jack will just have to kill one alien. Mr. Fleshman then pulls his flesh off and reveals that he's basically a giant brain with a mouth that shoots sparks, because he's the power source after all. At this point, Jack gives in and just starts to accept a hug from Mr. Fleshman when he has one last idea. He tenses up and forces himself into Mr. Fleshman's back. The mechanics of this are glossed over, but Jack has turned the tables and is now inside of Mr. Fleshman. This action apparently kills Mr. Fleshman, and Jack crawls out of the dead body still surrounded by a horde of alien people. They all drop to their knees at the same time though, and the green aliens spill out onto the grass and die because Jack has destroyed their energy source. Everyone cheers and applauds until Billy calls Jack into her room. She congratulates him on killing all the green aliens, but in a final page twist, wants to know what he's going to do about the blue ones, because for once, she wasn't lying. And then a giant blue creature kicks down her closet door, and that's how this one ends, with Jack having one last encounter with a threat in a doorway. Overall, I thought Invasion of the Body Squeezers was another solid story with some fun moments. I enjoyed all the alien encounters, even the ones that ended up being special effects. Jack was an okay protagonist, who didn't drive me too crazy, and I thought the aliens were decently creepy. I think the book fell into moments of feeling repetitive towards the end, especially with all the recaps, but it's pretty easy just to skim right past those parts. I'm going to give this one 4 to 5 binoculars. I think this story could have been streamlined a bit, but it's still a good time. As far as the vomit count goes for this book, despite Jack's complex over the costume chest smelling to high hell, he never puked, so the vomit count remains at 5. Well, that's it for Invasion of the Body Squeezers parts 1 and 2. I liked these two books, and the Series 2000 stories continue their streak of being pretty decent. Next week is I Am Your Evil Twin, and I have no idea what to expect with this one. I never really heard of it, and don't even recall seeing it. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Invasion of the Body Squeezers. Do you think this needed to be a two-parter? Is Mr. List one of the dumbest Goosebumps adults so far? Why was Jack randomly afraid of the dog with the tennis ball? That bothered me more than the water fake-out. Also, what did you think of my alien horror clips this week? The idea of alien abductions used to freak me out as a kid, and I think Fire in the Sky has the most intense one of these. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
The pride. The love.